Hey up. So for this video I decided, cleverly, to go down the Golden Mile and through the main tourist area of Tenerife and record the audio in my helmet, in the microphone, which stupidly wasn't plugged in right. So I'm having to do it all again. Onwards with the video, I guess. Now, if you don't know, I would be very surprised. But virtually every single day, I'm getting reports of, I can't even call it mainstream media or mainstream press, but I get reports of news articles in, what are they called? They were called tabloids, weren't they? Tabloid newspapers, about how Tenerife and the Canary Islands hate tourism, how there's graffiti everywhere, telling the tourists to go home and all the rest of it. And it's just rubbish. It's complete bloody rubbish. And this is coming from somebody who's lived in Tenerife nearly 18 years now. I run businesses here, and I can tell you categorically that the Canary Islands and Tenerife in particular do want tourists. What they don't want is the wrong kind of tourism, or to have the island saturated with tourism. And I read an article in I think it was Sky News, which was actually the most balanced article I've seen in a long time. And just as a little aside, this route that I'm taking now, this goes down the Golden Mile. So this is the Golden Mile here. And I think I recorded it about half 11, 12 o'clock in the day. So not the busiest time of the day by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if you come down there, I think at about 6, 7 p.m. when people are coming out for dinner. Those that aren't all inclusive, which I'll get onto in a minute. It's really quite busy. And I also speak Spanish, so I speak to locals that live here, people who run businesses. Not one of them says they don't want tourists. Not one. We all want tourism here. Um, I think part of the problem lies with the government and what they did during COVID to try and encourage tourism back to the islands, which is great. Let's get some more tourists to the island. But also this trend towards people going all inclusive. And there's different ways of looking at this. You can look at this from the hotelier's perspective. Of course, they want people to come to the island, pay that little bit extra to go all inclusive, so they don't have to leave the hotel. They get all the beer, all the food, all their entertainment, everything in the hotel. But the downside to that is that all the local restaurants, cafes, bars, the entertainments, even the excursions businesses on the street all suffer. And it was last year, ITV Tonight came over to Tenerife and I worked with them to help them uh, get on a boat, talk to local businesses about how they feel about all-inclusive tourists or all-inclusive tourism. And it's great for the hotels, but it's a disaster for all the local businesses because people will go out even if they're all inclusive, but they won't spend as much. They don't need to go to restaurants because they've got the meals paid. They don't need to go to bars because they've got the drinks paid. It's all inclusive. They don't need to see entertainment because they've got entertainment in the hotel. Some of them might possibly do excursions, but it's unlikely. So I would argue, yeah, that's probably going to cause a problem long term because the more people that come all inclusive, the fewer customers there are for all the other businesses in the area. But the main reason these protests I think the words in one of the tabloid papers was, "A wave of demonstrations have swept the Canary Islands." That's just ridiculous. It was one demonstration in Santa Cruz with a few thousand people. I was there. I had to navigate around it, and it wasn't that difficult to navigate around it. It wasn't as though there were a million people. I mean, the island only has something like 1.5 million population anyway. Um, and you could also be forgiven for thinking that the vast majority of the revenue in the Canary Islands comes from tourism. In actual fact, it's only around 30 to 35%. Now, that's a significant amount of money. I think the GDP of Tenerife is somewhere in the region of 45 to 50 million. You're gonna have to look this up. I got that from datosmarco.com, but it's also available on the Spanish government's website. And the figure of the tourism um, constituting 30 to 35% of the GDP comes from the OECD. But it also, if you look at the Spanish government, it says something closer to around 30%. In any case, it's a significant amount of money that comes in from tourism. And also, because I work in the tourism industry, I do know that around, in the summer months anyway, around 75% of the tourism comes from the UK. In winter, that tends to be more from the Nordic regions, but certainly in summer, about 3/4 of the tourists come from the UK. So there's no argument that Tenerife needs tourism. Tenerife depends on tourism because the only other industries or significant industries it has is agriculture, bananas. I believe they grow tobacco as well and export that. There are minor industries like shipbuilding, maintenance, goods shipping, and I think data storage is something that they got involved in a few years ago, or started getting involved in a few years ago. But my point here is very simple, that tourism as an industry is definitely 100% needed on the island. The kind of tourism we get, yeah, that's up for debate. I think the main reason behind the protests that happened, I think it was last week in Santa Cruz. I could remember the day, but I don't recall, but I was definitely up there. Is that what seems to be happening is a lot of people are trying to find property to live in. So people who work, like this is Veronica's that we're driving through now. There are thousands of people work down here on and off, through the summer period. All these people need to live somewhere, but to live within, let's say, 2, 3 kilometers of this area, if you're working there every night and you're leaving work at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, there's no public transport, so you need to live somewhere reasonably close. The prices are just astronomical. You could be looking at, you know, 1,500 to 2,000 euros a month, which might not sound like a big deal to somebody in the UK that's spending more than that on their property. But the average salary here is around 1,200 euros a month. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that if you're working in this area and you want to live in this area, it's just impossible. And then you have the problem that if you want to rent somewhere, that the landlord will probably want 3 months deposit and a month, not 3 months deposit, 3 months paid in advance, I think it is, plus a month's security deposit or more. They could even ask for 2, 3 months. It's entirely up to them. There are laws controlling this, but when demand is high, the landlords can pretty much do whatever they want. And people are having now to move out of the area. In another video that I did talking about the driving modes on the MP3 530 that I've got, I actually start my ride in El Puertito, and as I'm riding up, you can see all the caravans where people are living. And these are people that live on the island and work on the island. And some of them, unfortunately, are having to live in a caravan or a motorhome or even a hut because it's the only way they can afford to stay on the island. And it's because there is no social housing. There hasn't been investment in social housing for, as far as I know, at least 2 decades. And any housing that is being developed, I believe there was an article recently released by Ash Hotels, and they're developing housing for their employees, which I found quite ironic because back in the Industrial Revolution it was the mill owners that were building houses for their employees. Whether this property will be close to where the hotels are and the tourist areas, whether it will be affordable, who knows? And that's a really, really big issue. And the main reason why there's not a lot of affordable housing, I would argue anyway, um, is A, because a lot more people have come to the island looking for work because tourism has increased. Tourism increases every year, even by a small percentage, 3, 5, 10%. And the second reason is that a lot of people have purchased properties specifically for holiday lets. And I can also understand why they've done that. Obviously, it's an opportunity to make money. But a bigger driving factor behind buying a property for holiday let instead of buying it for a long-term let is the difficulty that homeowners have in getting squatters out of the property. So let's say, for example, somebody rents a property, they pay the 3 months deposit, they pay the security deposit, they give all the documentation that's required, they prove they've got a job, but then the job they've got, they get made redundant, or they just decide to cancel the contract, which can happen very easily here, and they need to look for another job, but they don't find a job, and they could end up staying in that property because legally they can't be kicked out. They have to go through, the owner has to go through a legal process, which can take 3, 6, 12, even up to 24 months just to get somebody out of the property. So as a property owner, it makes perfect sense to rent your property to a holiday let, because obviously these people are only going to be here for a week, maybe 2 weeks. So that's my kind of take on why we're in the situation we're in. It's heartbreaking for people who genuinely want to work and live on the island but simply can't because they can't find somewhere to live that, at a reasonable price. I've seen prices in the area I'm riding through now, Puerto Colon's just off to the left there, and San Eugenio to the right, and property up there to rent, I would imagine, would be around €1,500 a month. So you're going to need at least two people living in a property with, earning a full-time wage just to live in that area. It's just nuts. And as I said, I made reference to the Sky News article that was launched recently. I would say that is by far the most balanced article I've seen. Um, you're looking at an island that up to about the 60s, 70s was predominantly agriculture, and then of course they started developing hotels, resorts, and if you look at old photographs of Las Americas, 50s, 60s, early 70s, there's nothing there. There might be a hotel, and then 70s, 80s, 90s, there was an explosion of development. All the hotels now are trying to upgrade and become 3, 4, and 5 star rather than the 2, 3 star that we've had a lot of. So that of course boosts the tourism market, and it provides people with a better quality of accommodation when they come. But unfortunately, those hotels, the restaurants, the bars, all the businesses that we mentioned at the beginning, They all need people to work in them, and if those people can't afford accommodation, they're just going to go back to where they came from, or go to another area, you know. So that's kind of, the a summary of how things have gone. Um, the takeaway that I really, really want people to take from this video is, um, go back through the video and just have a look at how many people are on the streets. It is not that busy. However, it is April. Peak season starts around May through to September. And people genuinely want tourism on this island. I know I do. I could survive without tourism. I have another business that doesn't depend on tourism. But you know, tourism accounts for roughly, depending on whose statistics you listen to or read, roughly 30 to 35% of the gross domestic product, and employs something around 35 to 45% of the population. So it's not an insignificant number, of people that are working in tourism. And what I would also say to anybody watching the video is, this is all of these protests and the news articles that you see are not Canadian people and residents slating British tourists or tourists in general. They're not. They want tourists. Um, the problem is that the focus by the Canadian government has been development of hotels, development of resorts, with little to no regard for where the people that are working in these hotels and resorts are going to live. Um, it's just basic, it's common knowledge, it's common sense, isn't it? If you're going to build a big hotel that employs 100 people, 200 people, where are these 100, 200 people going to live? And then the properties that were available have been snapped up by, people that have got the money to buy them and rent them out as holiday lets. And fair play to them, why not? I know that the Canadian government are clamping down on that. They're going to make it much more difficult. Um, I know they're thinking of introducing a tourist tax. I think a date for that has been set as well. And we will just have to see how things go. Right now, we're just driving through or riding through El Duque, which is where Mr. Travelon was recently. It was an interesting video actually, and it was quiet then as well. There's some really, really nice hotels here, and if you go down to the beach, there's some beautiful beaches as well. But again, back to my point, you know, the island depends on tourism. It needs tourism. It wants tourism. But what it doesn't want is the government spending or investing millions and billions in hotels, but not providing any accommodation for the people to work in those hotels. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the ride, guys. If you've got any comments, any questions, put them in below in the video. Um, I'm more than happy to, you know, visit different areas of the island and give you an overview. I've got videos of Masca, Buena Vista, Anaga. There's some beautiful, beautiful places on Tenerife, on the island to visit. Um, so enjoy.